Hey guys, Henning and Morten from FlippedNormals here. In this video, we are going to talk about one of the core principles we encounter in art, which is observation. This might sound like a bit like an obvious one, because obviously you got to observe when doing art, but this is something like we keep seeing in general art when it comes to student work or just in general when you're looking at stuff on ArtStation or other places, that observation is often a skill which is lacking. And when it's lacking, you can clearly tell it's lacking. And when it's done well, you can clearly tell that it's done well.
Yeah.
So it's one of these things we want to cover for some time now. And like I said, it's really one of these core skills that you can apply to anything. This is not for feature film or games or whatever. This is for everything. If you're doing like logo design, or if you're doing characters of games or textures, anything at all, this is applicable to that.
Yeah. Learning to see properly it's a skill.
Yeah.
It really is a skill. It's a skill that takes time to learn, and as you progress through your career or doing whatever you're doing, you'll get better at it. If you are aware that you need to look.
Yeah.
I think that's the important part.
It's one of these things that you can have a model which is perfectly fine. Like, there's nothing wrong with the model, but you can tell that the person hasn't observed. But if you properly look at reference, it's just gonna be transformed. It's just gonna look so much better just because you looked at reference.
Yeah.
It's one of the key things we keep seeing. People don't really look at reference.
No.
And it's actually a big issue.
There's like a twofold thing. Some people feel that looking at reference is cheating because if you can't do it from within your mind, then you're not a proper artist, which is, obviously wrong.
Yeah.
Because looking at reference is the only way to truly understand how something is made or like how it's built.
Yeah. As an example of this, we've been I'm doing this with some people, like talking to them. Well, you didn't look reference. I didn't need reference. It was so simple. It wasn't so simple. And we're looking. I've been asking them, like, all right, so look around the room here now and just observe. And there's a room they're familiar with, and I'm like, close your eyes. What's the color of my T-shirt? And they were like, oh shit, because you don't notice that. It's somebody who you've been looking at for maybe you've been in our room with them for hours, and you don't know their T-shirt color or their eye color or anything like that. And if you don't know the eye color of the person you've been talking to for the last 5 hours, how are you going to know what something complex looks like?
I remember one that was one of those Facebook groups for artists, and someone posted a picture of, I don't know, I think it was a jaguar or something. And I hate when people try to make a point out of, I didn't use reference. It's cool that you do studies and stuff that are where you don't use reference as a practice thing. But if you're doing a final piece for something and the goal of this was like, I didn't use reference, a lot of the time you can see. Like for this one example, I don't know, some cat or something. And it was just wrong. Like the rendering was fine, it was a painting and the light was super cool, but the animal just looked off because he didn't use reference. Don't get me wrong, I think it's super cool to do studies without reference. Like, it's good practice, it's a good way to try to solidify what you think you know about something.
Yeah.
But doing final pieces and really doing intense studies of something, I would recommend using reference.
But also, don't get too attached to it in a way.
No.
For instance, if you are a storyboard artist and you need reference to every single post, like, you're pretty screwed here. You need to be able to draw a jaguar from memory just for that purposes. But And this is something I had before as well, like a big issue that I was way too attached for it. If I didn't have perfect photographic reference, I couldn't do it. So you of course use it. Don't use it sparingly. Use it a lot, but you should be able to create stuff as a basis from imagination as well. It's super useful. One of the things we've been talking about before is like I think in these videos as well is how I was learning animal anatomy, and I was drawing a horse. And I wanted to learn how to draw the horse, and trying to draw, I deliberately set myself up for failure because that's how you learn a lot. So I tried to draw a horse from memory, and of course I can't draw a horse from memory. I have no idea what a horse looks like. So it's like 6 legs and like 2 heads and all this kind of thing.
Wings and horns.
Turns out horses don't have wings. Who knew? But once you do that, and you clearly are gonna fail there, and then I started looking at reference, and that was the exercise. Don't look at reference. Find all the errors. and you're just looking at it and you're like, I was completely wrong. And then you do it again without reference, and then look at reference to learn from that. But I mean, if I'm doing a horse today, I'm looking at reference intensely.
Because you'll never be able to, like, especially, let's say in our field where we focus so heavily on realism, you'll never be able to one-to-one replicate something. This is the horse. Maybe, oh, damn, I missed a muscle or something. You know, there's always going to be something, which in some cases are fine. You don't have to get to that level of detail. But even when you're doing stylized things, looking at reference and trying to sort of boil it down to the basics, like what is the basic shape of something? When you try to take something complex from the real world, you want to put it into a stylized environment, looking at something from real life helps you to understand how something is built up, and then you can take that, simplify it down, and then instead of having 3 shapes, now you have one super shape that sort of encompasses everything. Yeah,
you're spot on there. I think it's incredibly hard to do something stylist if you don't understand how it works, because stylization is all about simplifying it. Yeah. And in order to simplify, you need to understand what it's built from. So let's actually look at some pictures here, because we have some pictures. Hey. We're going to look at walls now. So some of these pictures here are from Tower of London in London. And so some of the foundation for this is they're like 2,000-year-old Roman walls here. And I really like walking around to these like old sites because they're so interesting, particularly if you're walking around Tower of London. It's almost like a 1,000-year-old fortress and castle in the center of London. And what's cool about it is you can clearly tell that a lot of it was built in different eras. Like, it's not just a wall, it's not just medieval wall, but you can tell that some of it is really old and is built by a certain kind of stone, and then they had to repair it or extend it 300 years later, and they didn't have the stone. Like, maybe there was no more of that stone, or the masonry technique has evolved, or you just need to really observe from this. So the example we're looking at here now, I think this is actually the original Roman wall. And you can tell there it's not just wall, it's not just brick wall. You can tell there is so much variation. You have down here is one kind of stone, and then you have bricks up here, completely different color. Like, this is kind of like the green mossy field. You have the red bricks, and there is just so much variation in this. You see like a bigger stone here, and you see like smaller stones, different colors. If you're just doing like, I'm doing a Roman ruin, and you're just going like crazy with like the rock brush and ZBrush or whatever, you're not gonna get. It's just not gonna feel believable.
Yeah, but also like I think you have an issue where you see a lot of rock or wall tools, whether it's in Substance or for ZBrush or something. You have something that's super cool and super tileable. But you need to be able to break it up. Like you say, you have the red bricks, but you only have red bricks like right there. Yeah. And then maybe you have some unevenness between these 3 rocks. Oh, there was a gap in there. Yeah. But that gap only exists right there. Yeah. The mossy parts, you have, I don't know what they use for cement or like...
They actually had concrete for that.
Oh, okay.
During the Colosseum is built partly with concrete.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah. So you have the concrete inlay right here, but over in this area, you mostly just see like the big sort of rocks. Yeah. You don't really see the cement. Well, you see a little bit there. And then one detail, like as just a little bit of a contrast, right? You have the green moss here, but then all of a sudden, I don't know what this is, if it's... Oh, spoilers.
Oh no, more rocks.
It looks like that also could be like the sort of red rock there, or maybe it's like some sort of iron oxide that's been oozing out of the rock. Maybe something was in there. Just small little details.
It's observable.
Yeah.
One of the reasons we're doing this as well is because doing art now or doing CD today has become a lot easier over the last few years, particularly with the introduction of Substance Painter and Designer. There are now just the most amazing materials. You can just drag and drop in Painter and you just have instant rock wall. And I think there's a big problem now that people are starting off with CG and they assume that texturing is super easy. Because technically now, texturing has got a lot easier. Like back in our day, you had to do all this yourself. You had to properly project textures across all these kind of things and really observe. But today, texturing has got a lot easier. It's a lot easier to get up to 50% today. And you drag and drop a preset onto it. You have tons of tileables, and you're like, I'm done. But texturing and modeling and really anything in CG and art, it's all about observation here. If you're doing something like this, you can't just drag and drop a substance preset on top of it. You can drag some certain kinds of them, mask them out, and really blend them together here.
Yeah.
But our point about all this is you really just gotta look at the reference.
Yeah, I mean, no hate on substance. Substance is fucking awesome.
Yeah, absolutely.
It really speeds up your workflow.
Yeah.
And if you can get to 50 or 80, 90%, and the last 10% is your observation,
Absolutely.
that just speeds up your day so much.
Yeah. Let's be clear here, we're not hating on substance. This is not an anti-substance. This is
You know what's going to happen? People who use Blender are now going to, God damn it, and again.
Again, always. Same thing here, right? You just have so much variation. Here you can see there are clear layers. Again, this is like a 2,000-year-old wall. I think it's from like 50 CE. It's crazy stuff. So much variation here. Like you have the clear lines here and different levels of deterioration.
In there, above the red brick, they just sort of like loosely threw in rocks. Like, yeah, it's fine.
Exactly. You have some growth here as well because it's been out in the open for a long time. There was more weathering up here because this is where the primary rain would fall down on it, and there was a lot of erosion here. You see that these are clearly just laid out here, and like Morten said, they're just kind of like thrown together in the middle here.
Yeah, but this is very different from the previous wall we looked at, where you have the sort of inlays of red brick, but in between, like in this area, right? You have bigger rocks because we need to support more weight above. You can go up one level, the rocks sort of they go down in size, and then you have, look at this, big section, small section, big section, and then giant section. That's actually there. The red brick goes there. So there's a lot of variation in how things are laid in there.
It's really interesting. This is again why I particularly enjoy looking at medieval buildings, because they're not just made by machines or like these kind of things. They're made by humans, and there is so much beautiful variation in them.
We're gonna have a few more pictures of rocks, but I don't want you to get distracted by the fact that we're talking about rocks right now. No. This is not about walls or rocks or doing it in substance. It's still about observation.
Yeah.
It's about, I mean, you could take a picture of anything. It's a water bottle. Henning has a water bottle on the desk, and it is a terrible looking water bottle because he crushes the water bottles, right? But so I'm gonna try to describe this scenario for you. So imagine where you would grab a water bottle, right? You would grab it, that's where you squeeze it. So the bottom of the water bottle is perfectly fine, but where you squeeze it, that's where it gets messed up. That's the kind of small little details like, oh, yeah, okay, I guess I did.
We can always tell which water bottles mine because I just crush them with my hands. I don't know why I do that. I just do. No water bottle is safe.
It's very satisfying.
But only water bottles.
For some reason.
But looking at this kind of stuff as well, this is also very different. Like we had 3 different ones here, but they're kind of in the same style. But here you can see there's a lot more like moss here. And where the moss is accumulating is mostly here where on the top where the rain falls, and there is a lot more liquid here. But it's tempting here to just do like a kind of like curvature map and a world space map here in Mario or Substance and whatnot, and just do some streaks here. But like there's so much variation in this. You can't just do this in an automatic fashion if you really want observation. So just really look at these kind of things. There's so much breakup here. It's not just a straight wall down.
Look down there on the left hand side here. It looks like maybe there was something connected to this wall at some point, so it has a different kind of discoloration. Obviously, this looks like it's built in a different era from this. Like these rocks or bricks are weathered in a completely different way.
And there's some bricks to the left as well, and they're like rocks on the right. And maybe they've been there are some like areas where they've been repaired with bricks as well. So again, observation. We have a few more stuff here. So these are old like ancient Inca walls. Well, these are all the ones they're talking about in like ancient aliens, where they're like, there is no way man could have made this because they're so precise. Turns out they were just really good handy workers. They were just good craftsmen.
Turns out people are pretty precise.
Yeah. But like again, this is a completely different style. Like these two cultures had literally no contact whatsoever. They were made maybe at the same time, but it's a completely different style. And this is of course based on the material you have. Here they had no cement or concrete whatsoever. They were just like, let's make awesome walls. And
I guess these walls are just held together under the weight of the next kind of rocks that are like this Tetris kind of pattern where it's like set up, right? And if you look at the people, observe the people here. No, it's not about the people.
And then you can see like it's bigger at the base here and gets smaller and smaller. So again, it's just about observation. Here you can see like you have these marks here. Maybe these were to transport them, or we don't. I have no idea. I'm not expert in Incas, but they're. Just look at the variation. You have small stuff here going on. General texture. You have a streak going diagonal across here. You have little holes here. If you were to just apply a rock tileable to this, it would look fine. Honestly, it would look fine. But if you're going for like true excellence here, you're not just going for adequate.
No.
Adequate isn't adequate. Adequate is like the base level of it.
You have a little bit of bird poop there. But also, like, look at this. Maybe you have this dude, maybe this was an apprentice or something, right? So he wasn't as precise. So he had like a few mishits here on the side, whereas this one here, pretty perfect. There's so much variation. Like, what happened here? Yeah. Why is there like a black mark on there? You know, maybe you had something growing there or something.
And this is also why the beginning phases of a project, like getting up to 80% takes like 10% of the time. Like you were super fast getting up to a certain level. Like to get to this level here, you could just for pure textures, you could apply it just like straight up tileable. But going from like the 60s, 70s, 80% mark where it looks fine to it looks believable. Yeah. That's where you got to go in and just like do like hand sculpt and break up the edges, properly do like specular maps for the various parts to. You know, like if somebody, we're going to talk more about this later as well. Like if somebody touches like one specific area, let's say you have a statue or a certain rock or something like that, then it's just going to be wore down on a completely different level.
Like if let's say someone were to do this in Substance, right? You could totally do this with like the shapes, get some variation in there. But I'm curious how many would just do this, get like a normal map or a bump map out. But then what about this part here? We have a gap here. There's a tiny little gap here where they're offset, right? It's just this kind of attention to detail, just observing this. You might not have to put it in, but the fact that you know that it's there could help you.
We see this a lot in stairs as well, particularly if you go to an old church. You can see that where people have been walking. If you go,
it like slumps down.
Yeah, exactly. Like I just thought about that, so we don't actually have a picture of this. We could do some editing magic, but we're not going. If you look at the stairs in the Tower of Pisa, they are completely worn down. Yeah. Like they're you can barely walk there because they're so worn down. And then some guys were like, why don't you just flip them upside down? Yeah, they have. So they're also worn on the other side as well.
We actually had that in we're the house where I grew up. I had the basement to myself, and you know that house had been there for a long time, and the basement stairs, they're very, very steep stairs. You would walk in a specific way. You would walk with your feet to the side, so not down because you couldn't fit your feet there. So you would see there was like one part of the stairs where we would always walk, and it was just plank, wood stairs. You can see, but it got smooth where you would walk on. The rest of it was perfectly fine, but where your feet were with socks and shoes, that was like wear out the wood.
That's something I talk a lot about as well, when particularly when doing like design lectures and stuff, is look at the story behind things. You shouldn't just do, this is worn here. No, why is it worn here? It's worn because of something, like the stairs and pieces. Somebody's walking there for like 500 years, if not more than that. So it's not just, don't just add random details in certain places. It's all due to the story. Everything ties into the story you're trying to tell here.
You begin to infer the story. Like you're looking, but you're also trying to figure out what you're looking at.
Yeah, exactly. So now we looked at enough walls. Let's look at some lions. This is a weird looking lion.
So if anyone has any idea if this is a regular like African savanna lion, I don't know anything about animals, right? But I'm curious what kind of lion this is.
Yeah, so we have one here as well. This is like a regular lion. This here is like, I don't even know. But a point here I want to make though is one of the moments which was a pretty big moment for me in really understanding the level of observation required to properly do this was when we worked on Tarzan, the new Tarzan movie. Haven't seen a movie, apparently not a very good one. But I worked on the textures for the lions for that, when Tarzan meets the lions. I know that shot because I've seen that shot. And they're very close up, almost as close up here as this lion is. And we were doing the textures, and it was really hard to do. It was really hard to get right, and we couldn't really figure out why it didn't look right. And then we just looked at the maps which we made, and they would just look lacking details. And then we looked at some real world reference of this, and the level of detail here is crazy. So we have specific amount of dots here, the black dots here for where the hair grows out. You have every lion has like 3 dots here as well. 1, 2, 3. We had to get this into maps. We had to make masks for all of this here. They also have like a dark streak going down here. And the lions also have, you can see this in the next picture as well, they all have this white dot, a white blob here. Under the eyes, they're also white here. They have these streaks of white here. In the forehead, they often have like a center line down here, and they have tons of these streaks going up like this. And the reason we're talking about this is not a lion tutorial, but it's this level of observation we're talking about here. They have a little black line here. They sometimes have little dots up here as well. And the color variation here as well.
Yeah, there's crazy color variation. Like if you look at the gradient, the sort of orange gradient from the top going to very desaturated down to the snout, it nose, whatever it's called on a lion.
Yeah, and then if you are doing this for film, obviously you do have to observe this, and you are. If you are in the position where you're doing that, you'll probably know all these things here. But even if you're doing a super stylized lion, if you were to look at like Lion King and all that, they're still adding some of these details into it. They're obviously not adding all these dots here, because that would be beyond insane.
Like the more you know about real life and how things look, the more you can sort of play around with it.
Yeah.
And like
just hint at it.
Like just boil it down to what the essence of it.
Yeah. So more lion pictures. So here I think this is also interesting, because this looks like a generic female lion, but there is no such thing. There's so much variation here. Like
what you're saying is they don't look alike.
I'm very sensitive when it comes to my female lions here. So, all right, let me rephrase here. There is such thing as a generic lion. You can make a lion here. But the point, if you want to make this here credible, you shouldn't just do lion and do lion textures. You should observe here. Look here at the little scar here she has here on her ear. Tons of these little variations here. Like again, it's the same thing here. It's a black line going down here. Obviously a lot shorter fur than the last one.
Yeah.
Same thing here. Like they're white underneath here. You have the same patterns here. You have little dots, 3 little dots here like the other one. I have no idea why they have 3 dots here, but they do. There's just so much variation.
I like the little cut in on the ear. Like in the lower part of the ear, you have these 2 cut in on either side. Like that's just there's just small details everywhere.
A little fly here, I think it is. There's a little, on the whiskers, you have a little dark dot here. Maybe there's some dirt here, or, who knows. The point is, if you are doing something like this, pay attention to the detail. Like if you're doing the groom for it, like there's some clumping going on here. It's not just a perfectly straight one. And then it's also like, if you want to do an evil lion, like you would probably do, maybe you look more at this. This is a bit like rougher. There's a bit more variation here. But if you're doing like a cleaner lion, you might do something more like this. So
I was about to call it Jafar, but it's not. It's Scar.
Yeah,
right, that's the thing,
Jafar is slightly different.
That's Aladdin.
And then we're also looking at like figure drawing. So this is something. Take it away, Morgan.
Take it away. So I went to a like Russian style drawing school back in the day, and it was by a Russian teacher, and he'd like done this old school Russian drawing stuff. It's a very different kind of school from regular just sitting down and drawing, I guess. It's very observation based. It's very observation based. They did a lot of measurements, and some people didn't like the measurements, or some do it freehand, but for me, like I found measuring just like you straighten out your arm, you measure with your pencil, and you translate that onto paper. I found that really helpful. But the core of what you learn there is like back to what Henning was talking about with the horse. It's you like in figure drawing, you never draw from nothing. You always draw from a subject. Like you have like Leonardo da Vinci and what's the other guys?
Michelangelo,
that's the guy. They would never. I mean, probably they would sketch from imagination, but whatever, when they were doing a commercial piece, something they'd been commissioned to do, you always have a model. You always have reference. There's always something that you're basing what you're creating on.
Yeah.
The same thing with these figure drawings, which I found very interesting, is that when you do this kind of croquis figure drawing, you try to boil it down to the essence of what they're doing. You know, it could be the form that goes through the body. Like you look at this, look at how this leg ends here. You can follow that line all the way up to here, and then it breaks and goes up to the arm. So she would probably be holding, maybe she's holding like a stick like this guy here. So you have a form line that goes all the way through the body, and you would contrast that with the foot. See how there's a break there, goes up the other way, and just these small little things. Here you would have, look at this little mark here. This is just for the pelvis, right?
Same thing for all the other poses as well.
Exactly, just to emphasize this is where there's something poking out of the skin.
Yeah.
Here you would emphasize he's bending to the side, so you have a lot of skin meeting skin. So you put more weight into that. We have another one here that I really liked.
This is super cool.
It's very nice. Like if just at a glance, we're like, it's just a scribble.
Yeah.
But looking at it, you start to understand what's happening. You see, it's a woman leaned forward, twisting her arm. Her thumb is going in the opposite direction. You have a lot of emphasis on the breast because there's a lot of weight there. The same with the pelvis, right? That's where a lot of elements start to meet. And you start to contrast that here with the arm. Like, okay, you have the arms overlapping the body. So you would start to contrast that to have more emphasis on it. So it's just trying to observe these kinds of things. It's not, so this is very different from what we just talked about with the line, right? You want to replicate a line 1-to-1. You do 3 dots here. You do 12 dots there. Whereas with this kind of observation, I think there's a merit to all kinds of observation. Like here, you're purely looking at and you're essentially trying to stylize real world.
You're getting the
stuff.
essence of it down.
Exactly. Like here, we're not worried about her face. We're not worried
3 dots or nose.
where are her veins? Does she have any hair growing somewhere? It's not a relevant detail.
No.
She might have hair growing there. Maybe that's what that indicates. But you're trying to figure out what makes something.
Yeah.
Like you don't need perfectly rendered forms and portraits to understand what is happening in these pictures. You try to figure out what is it that makes it unique. And you observe that and you put that onto paper. I think the hardest part is not like people start to talk about drawing. They're like, you gotta, you start drawing, but what you're training is not your drawing ability. It's the translation from eye to hand. Translating what you're seeing and not inferring what you're seeing is the important part. Like if I were to ask everyone who's listening to draw a hand, like just from memory, you're like, okay, 5 fingers go there, blah, blah, blah. It would look like a sausage, right? Maybe some people would be super good at it because they've been drawing a lot of hands. But the important part there is learning to observe what a hand actually looks like. Because you have so many ideas of what a thing looks like because we're, as humans, we're trained to instantly recognize something. Like the face stuff, you're like, you see something in the distance, you see 2 dark spots with a nose and a mouth, you're like, okay, that's probably a person. Like we're genetically made to observe these kind of things and recognize. That's why we see faces and things, right? Like the Jesus on sandwiches and stuff. It's super weird.
Yeah, on the surface of Mars as well.
Exactly. And that we suffer so much from that when if we're doing drawing or 3D. It's like we're trying to do what we think something is, even if it's completely different. Like doing a horse, doing a hand, whatever it is. So doing figure drawing. Like I can guarantee you, if you try to do figure drawing in the beginning, you're way too much focused on the details that you know. You'd be like, okay, I can see her hand, and then you start like really going into detail with the hand. But the nice thing about if you're doing figure drawing is it's often short time. So you have 30 seconds, draw a pose. Oh shit! Now you have to all of a sudden boil it down to the core. What is the body?
That helped me so much because you can't get into details. You literally don't have time for that. So it's all about get the essence of it.
We would have these exercises where we would go, I think, a minute, 30 seconds, 15 seconds, 5 seconds, and we would have some crazy ones, which is like 3 seconds to draw the body. Obviously, you can't draw a body in 3 seconds, so you have to figure out. You instantly just look at the extremities. Where are the extremities and where is the line going through the entire body? That's what you focus on. Like it's not about the breasts or what's happening on the butt or
No.
what's happening with the hair loosely hanging out. It's the core of what you're drawing.
And that's really important when it comes to stylization.
Yeah.
So we're talking about humans. Let's talk about guns.
Are the human's best friend?
Yeah.
Wait, no, that's dogs.
So, yeah, close, Martin. Close. So we want to talk about this as well because, again, this is a whole substance thing as well. It's so easy to do this and just straight up apply the gun preset. Apply some apply a metal to it.
Gun metal?
And then you're like, yeah, exactly, gun metal, and you're done. I've seen a lot of showreels about this where you can tell that it's just presets applied to it. And I'm like, look, you're not observing properly here. You'll get to 50%, and for background prop and motion blur, that's fine. But if you're doing like a hero thing like this, observe all the variation here. You see there is some unevenness here. It's not a perfectly straight line. There is a little notch going down here.
Yeah, it drops down a little bit. It's not like it's not even. It might even have been like a perfectly milled piece at some point, but over time, with wear and tear, it starts to deform a little bit.
See where the hand is here. Like if you've been holding like metal for like 20 years, it's totally gonna be shaped by your hand, or like it's gonna wear out based on that. Just because it's metal and it's super hard doesn't mean that your hand isn't going to have an impact on it. You have tons of moisture and just the fact that there is friction on it for a long time here.
Yeah.
So we just really want to talk about, really just look at the observational details here. Like you have a little notch in here, a little bump in here. It's not the same noise pattern here as it is here. It's just slightly different.
I think an interesting observation is like the barrel of the gun is like for me, from looking at this, you have the scope, the barrel, and then the main body, and then you have the case, the house casing stuff.
I have no idea what it's called.
I don't know, gun stuff. These are obviously two different metals. Like one has a higher maybe carbon content, and there's more iron oxide on this one, so it's rusted more. It's these little things. You wouldn't just apply the same material, the same texture. Here, all of a sudden, you would have, oh yeah, there's more red. There's more oxides on this. These small little details.
And this would also impact the level of specularity you're seeing as well, like how shiny something is. If you've been touching something for a long time, it's probably a lot shinier because you've just been wearing down the patterns of it.
Like, that's what you get with a handle, right?
Exactly.
Like where your hand goes across every time you grip the gun.
Yeah.
Like this one right here, I think is interesting. Again, I don't know what this is, but if you were to just make gun from memory exercise,
I would never have thought about those details.
Look at this, but also look at how crooked it is. Yeah. Like this actually slants down, where this is more straight up here. So there's a variation. It's not just extrude, go back, done. Yeah. I think this is what can really set something apart. Also, why it takes a lot longer to make something believable like this.
And one of the things we want to get across in this video as well is that once you have this core set here of observational skill, you can do anything. Like if you
can fly,
you can totally do that. You can do most things. So like we're not environmental artists, we're mostly doing characters, but that doesn't really matter. We could totally do environments as well, like doing the bricks we showed you before, doing the walls here.
I mean, we might not have all the presets and all the quick workflows set up.
Yeah, it would be a bit slower, but it would look good in the end, just because you know what to look for. That's such an important thing. So more guns. This is also it's still a revolver, but it's a very different kind of it. Again, don't just assume you know what you're looking at. Tons of just a little rust here, and this is something you wouldn't just get with a preset. Drag and drop this, you wouldn't just get this. There's some unevenness going on here as well. You see you have a little rust here. No idea what this here is.
You see where you would imagine that maybe the gun has had some bumps. Like maybe you drop the gun at the tip there. That's why it's sort of flaked off and started to oxidize there. Maybe that's what happened.
And look at the subtle variations here. This is, again, super subtle, but this is what makes stuff look real.
Yeah.
What I see so much now is you apply an edge detect preset, and then you're done. And again, this is not just for texturing. This is for everything. Like stuff. This is not just for the fine details. This is for all the parts here. Observe all the parts. Observe all the subtle variations here. This is if you want to get some of these, you just gotta take it super high poly, take it into ZBrush, and just bash it up a little bit here. Just do a little pass on that. You see these tons of these small little scratches here. Might be in the wood grain, might just be because it's been dropped a lot. Or
I want to emphasize that this isn't like a how to make realistic looking things. It's
No.
just, I think real world life is that a thing? I don't know. Is a good way, because we have it around us all the time.
Yeah.
It's so easy to observe the real world. So it's a good exercise in trying to train your mind to look at things and how things actually look. I remember doing that a lot with 3D in the beginning, where I just started out modeling, and all of a sudden I would play this. I'm a nerd. I'd play this game where I would do wireframes on everything that I saw.
Oh yeah.
And I would try to imagine how an object was built in 3D. So I would observe the object. I would then try to like overlay like a wireframe of it in my head and figure out, okay, maybe this is how it's been built. The same thing you can do with texturing. This is maybe the story thing with this revolver. You look at the revolver, you go, okay, it's got some layers of paint there, it's got some chips there. Why would it have that? And why would that have happened?
I think the whole wireframe game, that's something everyone is playing in the beginning. Like, you're just looking at it, you're sitting on a bus, you're bored, and be like, how can I model the bus?
Yeah, exactly.
You can also tell that we don't know anything about guns because we're from Scandinavia. We don't have that here. I mean, we live in the UK, the police isn't even armed, we don't do guns.
What's a gun?
Yeah. So, we're also looking at this as well. Again, it's the same thing as before. Like, you gotta just observe it. Look at where the rust is. At least this kind of stuff is the majority is where the liquid can just form, or where it can retain the liquid.
Yeah.
So there is a lot. Why is there more rust here than here? Because there is a little notch here. The liquid can be stored here. So
yeah, and you probably have like, let's say that's right where the opening is, leading up to the opening of the barrel, right? Maybe you had more over time you had more gasoline or something being poured out there. Maybe something gathered there, so that's why maybe you have more sort of oxides forming there.
Yeah.
There's just all these small details all the time.
Yeah. So that's pretty much the first part of the video. If you've been sticking around, the second part is actually really fun. This is
unlike this, which has been super boring.
Sorry about that. So this is gonna be a bit quicker, and here we're just gonna talk a bit about story, because story is super important. Let's talk about Mad Max. So a lot of these next pictures are just shamelessly stolen from the subreddit on Reddit called Movie Details. It's awesome, tons of cool stuff here. So Mad Max is fantastic when it comes to details. We're not just here talking about like observe a thing here. What we're talking about here is, if you are going to create a credible world, you got to create a basis for it. Mad Max is obviously a super post-apocalyptic world here, where it's a lack of water and everything revolves around a machine. If you have a core of everything revolves around machines and cars and all that, not just as a cool car culture, but literally the religion is a car. Like, how would you design this world if everything here were to sort of revolve around like something else? All of these would be designed very differently. Like, what I would observe here is the scope here. This is a Mercedes-Benz logo. This is awesome. Like, maybe, it's a holy weapon or whatever, and the Mercedes is a status symbol. Or maybe they just had to get a scope from somewhere.
Yeah.
The point is that it's a Mercedes-Benz logo, and this is because the guys who made Mad Max had an absolute amazing attention to detail here.
Notice how he's not using the scope, though.
He's freestyling it.
He's freestyling.
He's shooting from the hip here.
Actually, literally shooting from the hip.
This is also one of the little things as well. This is from Furiosa's truck, and the pedal for adjusting the speed is what you use to measure a foot in a shoe store. It's just a nice little detail here. It's like, you're gonna do a huge truck.
Yeah.
You don't really have a whole lot of materials. Well, this is a really good way of having a pedal.
Yeah.
Next one as well. This is actually super interesting. Like I said, the religion rolls around. This is like a V8 engine, I think, and the way they're praying is literally based on an engine.
Yeah.
Like, that is really good attention to detail.
Like, look at their fingers.
Yeah. They're just overlapping and they're just going across here. So we're not just talking about, observe this micro scratch in here. Like, it's to the point that you figure out a core thing in your story, and then everything revolves around that.
Like, if you ever watched Mad Max, and maybe you liked the film, maybe you didn't, whatever, but try to go back to the film with all these things in mind, like looking at it from a point of view where there's no water, everything revolves around the machine, petrol's like like gold or whatever. Like trying to envision the world like it's meant to be envisioned, and see if you get anything different out of it. See if you start to observe something different.
Yeah, exactly. And also, if you don't like Mad Max, I mean, you're wrong.
It's a pretty cool film.
So also, this is from the Lego Movie as well. Here you can see fingerprints here. This is amazing, and these are actually rotating around. Like some frames is here, and in some frames is actually different places. On the Bachelor film we did a short film for our Bachelor, and we did something similar where we dipped our fingers in ink, and we took pictures of those, and we used them as texture maps, which were just rotating around based on certain frames. So we have fingerprints here. You have a line in the middle here. Mad shout out to the guys at Animalogic who made this.
You know, where the two pieces are molded. It's like,
and it's not straight.
No, it's not. And you see, like it even looks like the two pieces on either side, you know, the hair, where the hairline is going across the head, is like they're different thicknesses as well. So you get up here, you have a much tighter speck right there, because maybe the groove is shallower, and here it might be deeper. So there's a little bit of difference there. That all adds to the realism. You
can even see here, like the reflective part here. It's not just a texture. Like you can actually see there is some depth to it. It's actually going out here.
Yeah.
So I think Lego Movie is an example of of incredible eye for detail here.
Yeah.
And then let's look at some Pixar stuff.
Henning's favorite example.
This is awesome. This is from Finding Dory, and this is Dory's parents. Look at the guy to the left here. He's bald.
He's a fish.
And he's bald. How do you make a fish bald? Or maybe he's not bald, he's balding. This is like this is like a stereotypical dad from who's like in his mid 40s, 50s, and he has this kind of hair.
Yeah, like a weird receding hairline, but on a fish.
Like, how awesome isn't that? That is good attention to detail. You balding a fish.
Yeah.
So,
but also, just if you look at it from a design point of view, just look at the shape differences of these two fish. Right, he is a blocky, square fish, whereas with her, I haven't watched the movie, I don't know the names. Look how elegant the woman fish. Look at how elegant her shapes are, how they flow. Like just the differences in their two tails, right? Yeah. His is just like burp, burp, burp. Yeah. Whereas hers goes up, has a little flare to it. There are just a lot of subtle differences all throughout.
You could blur this. Like you have all these like all the details here and all that, but you could blur this image, and one would still read as a dad.
Yeah.
Like, and one would read as not a dad.
Not a dad.
And then last example we can look at as well. This is again from one of the Pixar movies, I think Monsters Inc. And here, subtle things, but there is less paint where the bell has been going, because this has been going for a long time. You're sure you have some scratches here and there, but if you were just applying a preset to this, it wouldn't feel right. It's one of these subtle things here that it's just attention to detail.
But also, when I think about it, it's like, why, like there's a small ring going around just in this area. Maybe the vibration from hitting there does something to the paint in this area, right? Maybe. It's just, there's small details all around.
Yeah. So with all this said, we're all looking at all the little guns, which we know nothing about, all the Roman walls and all the lions and all that. There is a common thread here, which again, observe real world reference. Yeah. And then take what's useful from it. We're not saying replicate this exactly.
No.
It's just use it as a tool. And if you do, your work will feel so much more lifelike, incredible, and again useful if you're doing like Stardew Valley, if you're doing like the most 8-bit game in the world, which is amazing, or if you're doing like Star Wars, or if you're doing a bold fish and Finding Dory. Super cool stuff. So let us know if you have any thoughts about observationists. We'd love to hear if you have any tips on.
Maybe on you 100% disagree, which would also be interesting. But yeah, I mean, thank you guys so much for watching.
Yeah, thanks guys.
If you want to see more content like this in the future, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And thanks for watching.
Thank you.